Hey everyone, I'm going to explore the recoveries of mass extinctions. There is an abundance of literature for the Permian and End Cretaceous or KPG extinctions, so I will focus mostly on those recoveries. Extinctions have occurred all throughout Earth's history. 99% of all species that were once alive are now extinct. There were 5 mass extinctions that paleontologists have agreed upon: the Ordovician, Devonian, Permian, Triassic, and the KPG. But how did life recover after these mass extinctions? How did the environment restabilize?
The recoveries of mass extinctions had huge effects on the history of life. The recoveries were non-uniform, varying among taxa and regions.
It turns out that the recovery of ecosystems and life was a lot more complicated than previously thought, nor fully understood. There were many variables that played a role in the succession of Earth's systems, but the most common factor was time, which suggests a possible speed limit exists for the pace of biotic change. It typically took a long time for ecosystems to stabilize and for life to have a large biodiversity.
Increasing evidence points to longer extinction durations and shorter recoveries. How an ecosystem recovered depended on those who survived and those who didn't. Removing dominant taxa transformed ecosystems entirely. Different clades responded uniquely compared to others. Species reestablishment depended on location, taxa, habitats, and environments.
This table displays the losers and the winners of the 5 mass extinctions. But keep in mind that fossils have a particular view, and some species live and die without leaving a trace.
The probability of finding a species becomes lower as their population decreases. The Ordovician didn't have as large-scale effects on the ecosystem structure, whereas the selectivity for the Triassic extinction was unusually high. This demonstrates the complexity in extinction selectivity and origination, which follows.
Mass extinction phenomena include high extinction rates, changes in species richness, ecosystem instability, and the occurrence of disaster taxa. Fossil evidence leads to speculation of a rapid recovery of terrestrial tetrapods in Peru, such as Lystrosaurus. This could mean that the disturbed environments of the post-Permian extinction maybe favored the Lystrosaurus. The consequences of the KPG mass extinction on plant evolution remain poorly understood. Legumes rose in parallel with several well-studied animal clades, such as Placentalia. Polyploidy occurred close to the KPG. On land, habitable zones were drastically reduced, very warm, with acidic rain and drought. There were archosauriform track assemblages found in the western Alps of tetrapod Isocharotherum gardatensis, which roamed the earth of the Permian extinction, which is evidence that not all tetrapods were exterminated. Rapid initial tracemaker communities such as chondrites, zoophycos, planolites, and thalassinoids recovered after the KPG. Full recovery was also rapid, around 700,000 years to get a full, well-developed, tiered community. This suggests favorable environmental conditions were re-established quickly after the extinction. Many survivors of the extinction tended to go extinct later. Some taxa disappeared from the stratigraphic record immediately after an extinction, but reappeared later. This is called Lazarus taxa. Succession after mass extinctions varied in duration, depending on if taxa responsible for key ecosystem functions were affected or how badly the perturbation changed a biogeochemical reservoir, the atmosphere, ocean, etc. Key Earth system processes such as weathering, soil formation, organic carbon sequestration, nutrient availability, and recycling moves elements between Earth and its reservoirs. Recovery from the end Permian has been argued to take well over 10 million years to get back to the stable, sustainable ecosystems. The ecosystems were weird immediately after an extinction. They were made up of low diversity communities with ecologically generalist fauna. These ecosystems were different from how the ecosystems before the perturbation and long after the event. For example, The corals and reef systems after the PT extinction were replaced by microbial carbonate mounds for around 6 million years. Reef colonization is likely to take place during high diversification rates, millions of years after the extinction event. Change in ecosystems is arguably as dramatic as the loss of taxa. There is typically a lag in diversification of taxa immediately after the extinction, then followed by exponential diversification as clades began to evolve and fill niche spaces and create more complicated ecosystems. The evolution of species allowed entirely new ecological strategies and interactions to evolve. Recovery also depended on the events that occur after the mass extinction. For example, there is evidence that volcanism from the PT extinction continued to strike the environment. There would be carbon fluxes of over 3,000 ppm, down to 300 ppm, then back up to 3,000 parts per million. This happened for millions of years. These continued perturbations had a large effect on the recovery time and the surviving taxa. There is recent evidence pointing to another bolide impact during the KPG recovery, while the climate and life were still trying to recover from the Chicxulub impact. The complexity of ecosystems reappeared once the evidence of environmental disturbances disappeared. In conclusion, time was the main ingredient to how life and ecosystems recovered from a mass extinction. Who survived and who didn't played a role in ecosystem restructuring, and continued disturbances influenced recovery.